This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, explicit videos. A Nova Scotia woman is shocked to learn a dog sitter filmed OnlyFans content in her home.
Name change. CBRM looks to rebrand Centre 200 to bring in new revenue.
And home stretch. With 1 week to go until Election Day, Nova Scotia politicians make their pitches to voters.
Rinse and repeat. Yes, this low still stalled to our east. More clouds, showers, drizzle, and gusty northerly winds for Wednesday. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. A woman from Blandford is speaking out after she learned her dog sitter was filming explicit videos in her house without permission.
She says it was a breach of privacy and wants others to be mindful of who they trust in their homes. Selena Alders has our top story tonight.
Amanda Jodry LeBlanc is warning others after her home ended up on OnlyFans.
They were in there doing the stuff. And post it.
She's pointing out her distinct bathroom tile. Seeing it in the background of explicit videos promoted on social media was the moment she realized something was wrong.
I guess I was so shocked by it that I still am shocked by it, to be honest with you.
The videos were posted on OnlyFans, a subscription website mainly used for pornographic content. The account belonged to the person she'd hired to look after her dogs. The videos are too graphic to show.
This person was paid to do a job in people's homes that we trust them to be in and trust them to respect our homes and trust them to respect our privacy, etc. And so it just feels kind of, for lack of a better term, violating.
Jodry LeBlanc asked that the content filmed at her house be taken down, and the dog sitter did so. Nova Scotia RCMP could not say whether a crime was committed since the incident was not reported to police. The dog sitter did not respond to requests for an interview. Legal expert Wayne McKay says it's likely not a criminal matter, but it raises serious concerns about privacy.
In fact, one of the terms they use in the court cases that talk about this tort of privacy is intrusion into seclusion. And your home is your private space, your ultimate private space, your castle. And so I think that clearly is recognized as a private zone. You know, if it was done in a public setting, then it's not a privacy issue.
One human sexuality researcher says the issue here is that the dog sitter did not have consent to film the videos in someone else's house.
If this was a film shoot or a porn shoot for any other company, it would involve contracts and money exchanged, and that clearly didn't happen in this case.
For Jodry LeBlanc, it's about a violation of trust. She wants others to be cautious about who they allow in their homes.
You do you. You know, everyone can do whatever they want. I don't care. People have to make money. People like to do that. Good on them. That's on you. I just don't want it done in my home.
An OnlyFans employee said they could look into the situation if it was reported, but they could not say whether any company policies were breached. Selena Alders, CBC News, Halifax.
Halifax police say there will be no charges laid after a pedestrian was struck and killed by a bus late last month. A 24-year-old woman was pronounced dead at the scene in downtown Halifax on October the 31st. Police say she was struck by a Halifax transit bus that she was attempting to catch up to on Spring Garden Road.
A new report identifies more than 30,000 square kilometers of ocean around Nova Scotia that could be suitable for offshore wind farms. That's nearly 3 times more than was identified in an interim version of the report that came out earlier this year. Some in the fishing industry are worried about the potential overlap between offshore wind development and fishing grounds. Vanessa Byrne of the Atlantic Groundfish Council says some fishermen could see their fishing grounds shrink.
And then even if they can relocate to catch their quota, it doesn't mean that the fish are going to be there. We know that offshore wind is going to change oceanographic systems pretty dramatically, temperature, salinity, mixing and all of that. So we don't know where the fish are going to be after the impacts of offshore wind happen.
Burns says she hopes each potential offshore wind project is subjected to a federal impact assessment that considers fisheries. The provincial government is expected to open a call for bids for the first round of offshore wind permits sometime next year.
And with a first look at the weather, here's Ryan Snoddon.
Boy, it is a November gray day, isn't it?
Rinse and repeat. That is... Sorry about that. Mic on, always a good thing. Rinse and repeat is definitely the name of the game as we move through the next couple of days. I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's almost like Groundhog Day, right? And as we look at those temperatures tomorrow, very similar to what we had today. High single, some low double digits, down into the south and west. May see a couple of sunny breaks. We did see some sun today, but it was very limited. And this case is going to be that again for tomorrow. Northerly winds sustained 20, 30, gusting 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. So it is going to be, again, a little on the breezy side. Now, lighter winds as we turn the page into Thursday because that low is slowly but surely working its way offshore. So there's Wednesday. Note the showers not as frequent, but still in the mix. Periods of rain, by the way, still squeaking into Cape Breton. A little damper there. Then for Thursday, you can see just a lot of clouds, not a whole lot of action, and then that much needed rain. I mean, if it's going to be cloudy, it might as well be raining. And it's this system here, Friday into the weekend, that will be bringing us that beneficial rain. We'll talk about that with your full forecast coming up.
All right, stay tuned for that. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
The Cape Breton Regional Municipality is hoping to cash in on Centre 200. The municipality is looking to sell the name of the facility in exchange for much needed funding. Kyle Moore has that story.
For nearly 40 years, the island's largest event centre has been known as Centre 200, but that could soon change. The CBRM is seeking expressions of interest for naming rights to the facility.
This has been a process that we have been working on for the past number of years, and it's finally come to fruition where we now have all that we need to put something out into the market.
Attracting a corporate sponsor to attach their name to a sports facility is common practice in many cities across Canada. In 2014, the Halifax Metro Centre became the Scotiabank Centre. The deal included the corporate sponsor spending $650,000 a year for 10 years to have its name in and on the building, and also included $5 million for capital upgrades to the facility.
There was a great deal of investment within the interior of the building by Scotiabank, and we will equally hopefully have those opportunities.
Centre 200 opened in early 1987. It was named to honour the 200th anniversary of the founding of Sydney. The 5,000-seat arena recently received a brand new scoreboard and sound system. But manager Paul McDonald says there is no shortage of work to be done.
We are not at the end of life, but we'd like to extend it a lot further, going forward. We're getting to that point, and I think it's reasonable to look at our funders and say, we need some support here to move this building into the next phase of its life.
McDonald says the price tag will depend on the sponsor and their needs, but if successful, there's hope this could open up other opportunities for the CBRM.
I want to see a name and a brand on the building that's going to bring some excitement to the building, some investments into the building, a partner that's willing to make the building as positive as they can, maximize its opportunities.
The request for proposals closes December 5th. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
Two of the main political party leaders spent today highlighting parts of their respective election platforms, while another cast their ballot. PC leader Tim Houston says that if his party is re-elected, it would begin an ambitious highway development project in HRM. The work would include a connector road from Highway 101 to Hammonds Plains Road, 3 new interchanges along Highway 102, and adding an additional lane to either side of Highway 102 from exit 4C to exit 0.
These projects are a once-in-a-generation investment. They're an $810 million investment in Nova Scotia's future. In fact, this will be the largest ever investment in HRM's roads and the largest investment in time savings for HRM residents.
The plan does not include details for how that traffic flow would flow into the city core. Liberal leader Zach Churchill announced how his party, if elected, would protect renters.
Many renters are worried that they are one bad day away from losing the roof over their head, and that certainly shouldn't be the case. We have a goal in our housing plan to ensure that no Nova Scotian should have to pay more than 30% of their income on housing.
That plan includes creating a zero-interest rent bank, a residential tenancies enforcement unit, and tying rent control to inflation and vacancy rates.
NDP leader Claudia Chender did not make any formal announcements today, but she did take time to stop into a polling station. Chender, with her daughter in tow, went to cast her vote. Elections Nova Scotia says that as of November the 18th, 64,000 early votes have been cast. The number was 75,300 at this point in the 2021 election.
In the week before Nova Scotians find out who will be their next premier, a lot is at stake.
How will the main political parties spend their time and energy on the home stretch? The CBC's Jean Laroche and Michael Gorman share their insights.
So, Mike, here we are in the dying days of this campaign, about a week left. What has struck me as the most interesting about this campaign is for a party that is 10 to 20 points ahead, according to the polls, the PCs have sent out a number of missives attacking either a specific candidate or a party in a particular riding.
It's true, and along with the emails, there's also been a lot of social media content. And ordinarily, when you see that coming from a party that's up for re-election, it indicates that they're in a close race. I think of 2017 when Stephen McNeil and the Liberals were vying for a second mandate, and really up until the final day, it was touch and go as to whether or not they would hold their majority or slip to a minority. In this case, there's no indication so far that Tim Houston and the PCs are in such danger.
30 negative press releases to 10 policy announcements from Mr. Houston.
That's just a fact. I think Nova Scotians have a right to know the facts, and as political parties, it's okay to share the facts.
Tim Houston runs a caucus that operates like a scrappy opposition even when they're in government. They've always done that. They continue to do that.
And so it could be that this strategy of really leaning into the other two parties, and in particular some people, is meant to try to deprive those parties and candidates of any type of oxygen whatsoever. Although it could also indicate, at least in some districts, they're worried about their ability to hang on to a couple of seats. We've seen them trumpeting the fact that their candidate is the only one who lives in the district. Ironically, their last leader lived in Halifax and represented Cumberland South.
For 8 years, not a peep about whether or not that was appropriate. The other thing that's interesting in this particular campaign is media access to the leader. No surprise, the toughest access has been with the PCs, the party in power, the party looking to a re-election.
Often the norm.
Yes, but you look at the NDP, normally they would relish having reporters around and holding events and getting all sorts of attention. In this particular race, as many events have been closed to the media as open to the media, which is an interesting position for that party to be in. Obviously, maybe the thinking behind that is, okay, we need to be strong, we can't stumble, let's keep Claudia Chender more tightly controlled, and of course, Zach Churchill available to all.
Well, and that could also explain what the NDP is doing here. You know, the Liberals are facing a lot of challenges on a lot of fronts, and so the NDP and Claudia Chender may be very content to let Zach Churchill wrestle with those challenges. And if he falters, if the party falters, they're able to have a pretty clear path to second place, which, given recent election history for them, would be a nice result. But Zach Churchill is facing many challenges, chief of which is the massive unpopularity of the Liberal Prime Minister in this province, and he's got to contend with that. He's also lost a number of MLAs who would generally be considered money in the bank for re-election. And so, you know, Zach Churchill is contending with all of these challenges, and really one of the only ways to push back against them is to be as available as possible to try to build awareness about what he's doing.
So in these final days, if you see a leader in a district that was previously held by their party, it means they're worried about the need to shore up support in that riding. And if they're in areas that were previously held by a rival, that suggests what they're looking for is opportunities for growth and maybe a steal from that other party.
The evening hours come so early now, don't they?
They sure do.
Streets of Halifax there for you folks.
Ryan is up next with his full weather forecast. We'll see you in a few.
Well, we're in a rhythm with the weather right now. There's a certain familiarity with the forecast, isn't there?
Well, if gray's your favorite color, you're in luck.
Absolutely. Plenty of that to go around. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we need the rain, and we're not really getting it for most of the province. So the Northeast, more beneficial rain today and into Cape Breton. But yeah, it'd be nice to see a little more widespread shot. Halifax needs it. South Shore needs it. That will come Friday into Saturday. Speaking of rain, I don't normally start with this, but we're going to do this today because this is just an incredible storm, which is developing on the west coast right now. And you can see that that system is absolutely wrapping up, and a very strong storm. This is going to produce winds, sustained winds of 70 to 90 kilometers per hour for Vancouver Island tonight, with gusts to 120 kilometers an hour. A very powerful storm. It's also going to bring flooding rain to Northern California and feet of snow to the mountains of California and into Oregon. So this is going to be just an absolutely powerful storm. Also going on in Canada, that is snow. Saskatchewan, Manitoba could see upwards of 30 centimeters of snow from that system there. So yeah, it's there's a lot going on right now for sure. For us, we're kind of locked into this pattern, but it's pretty active. And you can see with this system here spinning over the Great Lakes, that's the center of the low. We're actually going to see a new low developing in this trough here. That's what's going to be working its way in for us for Friday. Note the cold temperatures, the jet stream here, and you can see this cold pocket of air. -8 in Calgary, -6 in Regina, -6 in Edmonton. -18 in Yellowknife, looking very, very winter-like there, is it not? And you can see the temperatures are still surging up into the southeast parts of the U.S. Closer to home, and we're looking at our temperatures that are anywhere from 6 to 8 degrees, 9 in Lunenburg and Greenwood, but most of us kind of parked in that 6, 7, 8 range. Now, as we look at the winds, they've been relentless again today from the northwest, sustained right now in the 30, 40 range, and we're going to be very windy tonight as well. As far as night times go, the winds usually back off a little bit. Tonight, though, they're going to be gusting pretty much near 40 to 50 through the night. Still some gusts near 60 in many cases out there right now. But gusting 40 to 50 tonight with those temperatures dropping into the 6 to 8, I should say steady in the 6 to 8 range for the overnight tonight. Winds are going to become a little more northeasterly for Cape Breton through the overnight tonight. Note that most of the green on the map here from Cape Breton across the North Shore, that is where we have been seeing the bulk of the activity today. That will sink southward and will dissipate, but still bring some shower and drizzle chances overnight and lingering into Wednesday across the mainland. Though as we work our way into the afternoon, there are those sun breaks that are possible in the southwest, including Halifax tomorrow. The northeast continues to be the cloudier spot than not, and we will continue to see some showers and even some periods of rain, some steadier periods of rain possible again for Cape Breton tomorrow. Temperatures 8 to 10 degrees, 8, 9 degrees Antigonish into Guysborough County. Central, looking at temperatures anywhere from 7 to 9 degrees. And again, those breaks of sun, we did see them today. They were super limited. Eastern Shore, Truro, up towards Cobequid Bay, saw some breaks of sun, and down to the south and west, we'll likely see them again tomorrow where we saw them today, when that'll be our best chance of cracking double digits. Thursday is a drier day overall, but still a chance for some drizzle here in through the northeast, including Cape Breton. Just clouds across the south and west. And there's the setup for Thursday, still with a northerly wind, though lighter. Sustained in the 10, 15 range on Thursday with some gusts upwards of 30, but a lighter northerly flow, thankfully. And then here comes the Friday system with that first band of rain that looks set to move in on Friday. That one won't be enough, but looks like there's some optimism here that this low, which is going to be spinning around in New England thanks to this blocking high, is going to be wrapping in more moisture for Friday night with more bands of rain Friday night into Saturday. And so hopefully those will still lots of uncertainty in terms of just how much we'll see, but a little more optimistic today that we'll at least see some substantial rain when we add up Friday and Saturday. Showers Sunday, Monday, and note those temperatures starting to drop off and maybe even some sunshine by Tuesday of next week.
Be worth the wait, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. All right, Ryan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Water conservation measures are in place for some parts of Halifax. Speaking of the lack of rain, we'll talk to the city's water utility about what that means. More than 100,000 people in the Halifax area are being asked to voluntarily conserve water. This fall has been unusually dry, and that has caused the water levels in Lake Major on the Dartmouth side to be lower than normal. Brittany Smith is with Halifax Water. Ms. Smith, so how bad is it?
We're seeing that Lake Major is approximately 1 meter lower than normal years.
And so when Lake Major is that low, what does it mean for the water system?
The Lake Major water system is vulnerable due to its design to lower water levels. That's why we have requested that residents reduce their water consumption.
And this is affecting a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, over 100,000 people, including residents in Dartmouth, Burnside, Cole Harbour, Westfall, North Preston, and Eastern Passage.
And so how unusual is this kind of phenomenon happening this time of year?
Not as unusual. We have seen this in the past, as recent as 2019, but this year we've had significantly less precipitation, which has caused lakes across Nova Scotia to be lower than normal.
Yeah, causing lots of people issues, people who have drilled or dug wells as well, which is a completely different subset of society. I know you're concerned about the people who are on the water system, and I understand you're trying to figure out an engineered solution. What would that mean?
That's correct. Currently, we are able to send some of the water from Pockwalk through the McDonald Bridge line, and that's happening currently, as well as we have folks working on other engineering solutions. But we're hoping that with this voluntary conservation measures and we can hopefully get some rain soon, that this will help alleviate the situation.
So as I understand, part of the engineering solution would be finding a way to lower the water intake system at Lake Major. How would that work? How involved is that?
That's quite an extensive process that will take time and, of course, regulatory approval. So that's something we won't be able to see for several years now. But we are working on a temporary solution currently.
So I gather, without getting too much into the weeds here, you would be lowering that line so that it could perform at a good level when water levels were in fact lower.
Yeah, so the simplest terms is that we have a full cup of water with a very short straw. So the way that it's designed right now, while there's plenty of water in Lake Major, the straw or the system's unable to actually utilize that water. So it'd be coming up with an engineering solution to be able to lower our straw further into the water.
So tell us more about what this means for people on the Halifax water system in the area.
So this means that we're requesting that folks be cautious of how much water they're using and follow some simple directives, and any little bit helps. So that includes, if it's yellow, let it mellow, shortening their showers, as well as assuring that you have a full load of laundry, and if you have a dishwasher, that's full before running.
Are you seeing the benefits of this order, this voluntary order at this point?
I don't have that information.
Okay, so you're looking at the forecast, one eye on what has to happen to make the water continue to flow, but also looking at the forecast. How hopeful are you, or how quickly might things turn around?
We do need a prolonged period of rain over several days, so not just a little sprinkle here and there. So we are hopeful that the rain will come, but with folks also conserving their water, that helps as well.
It is a voluntary ask at this point. Could this become mandatory? Is that possible?
We're looking into all possibilities, but we're really hoping it doesn't have to come to that.
I'm sure lots of people in the neighborhood there are hopeful of that as well. Brittany Smith of Halifax Water, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Coming up, world leaders are sitting down for the final round of talks as the G20 summit wraps in Brazil.
Trump's top pick for Attorney General Matt Gaetz is under more scrutiny amid new sexual offense allegations.
Welcome back. Ukraine began firing American-supplied longer-range missiles into Russia today.
It is the first time Kyiv has used the weapons since Russia launched its full-scale invasion exactly 1,000 days ago. Crystal Gumansing has the story.
1,000 days into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, world leaders are highlighting the courage and resilience of Ukrainians in the face of Russian aggression. But it's a military move by Ukraine that's getting a lot of attention and being called an escalation by Russia. The Kremlin's defense ministry says 6 long-range U.S. ATACMS missiles were fired by Ukraine at the Bryansk region. American media, including the Washington Post, cite media sources saying U.S.-donated ATACMS were used in that strike. Now, approval for those missiles to be used on targets inside of Russian territory was just granted on Sunday. When asked, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky did not say if ATACMS were used. Instead, he said that Ukraine also has Neptune long-range missiles that were developed locally and that Ukraine will use anything at its disposal. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin formally lowered the threshold for using nuclear weapons, opening the door to a potential nuclear response by Moscow, even to a conventional attack by any nation supported by a nuclear power. For example, Ukraine, backed by the U.S. Zelensky is encouraging supporters to act and not be afraid, saying his country wants peace. Russia does not.
They presented nuclear weapons strategy. Why? They didn't present peace strategy. Did you hear it? Did you read about it? No, of course, nuclear weapons strategy. Because he wants just to make chaos in the world.
Now, this was not the first Russian nuclear threat, but it was met with strong condemnation from Europe's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell.
To call for the nuclear, to talk about nuclear deterrence at that moment is something that we strongly reject. We condemn any reference to the use of nuclear arms.
Zelensky told the Ukrainian parliament that the war can be won with support and said resilience is needed. Crystal Gumansing, CBC News, London.
The 2-day G20 summit is winding down in Rio de Janeiro. During his closing news conference, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talked about Canada's support for Ukraine in its war with Russia. He also discussed concerns about Donald Trump's return to the White House. The CBC's Evan Dyer has the latest.
Just days after President Joe Biden gave Ukraine the green light to use American missiles to attack Russian territory, Moscow angrily denounced 6 strikes on its Bryansk region. In Rio, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he backed Biden's decision.
Because Ukraine hasn't been able to strike on factories and military production sites in Russia, we have called for that for a while.
Although President-elect Donald Trump has made it clear he'll try to force Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky to the negotiating table, Trudeau says Canada isn't ready to give up on Ukraine's goal of victory. He's been meeting here with other allies who feel the same way.
We're very aware of potential challenges with President Trump coming in, but we're not going to panic. We're going to continue to stay focused on getting the support to Ukraine.
But Trudeau has conceded that all the other Western allies together don't have enough heavy weapons systems to fill the gap that will be left if the U.S. abandons Ukraine. Another major area of disagreement between Trump and most other world leaders is on climate change. Yesterday, Trump nominated Chris Wright to be his energy secretary, a fracking executive who says there is no climate crisis. Trudeau says it's partly Canada's green energy and infrastructure projects that have made it the country that gets the most foreign investment per capita of all 20 countries represented at this summit.
If Mr. Trump doesn't want to take on the opportunities associated with climate change, Canada will continue to.
Countries are meeting this week at the COP29 summit in Azerbaijan, where they have till Friday to thrash out a deal whereby rich countries will compensate poorer ones for the sacrifices they're being asked to make to fight climate change. Most wealthy countries, including the U.S. under Joe Biden, have agreed that if poorer countries are being asked to forego the cheap and dirty fossil fuel growth that already helped the West grow rich, they should be given something in return. But few expect Trump to honor any commitment made by a lame duck Biden administration. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Rio de Janeiro.
And still no breakthrough at the COP29 climate talks in Baku. Negotiators are trying to work out how much money rich nations must provide to poorer nations to cope with climate change. And as Susan Ormiston reports, less attention is being paid on how to cut harmful emissions.
Tax billionaires, polluters, and fix the climate, a protest in Brazil for G20 leaders meeting there, who didn't copy that in their final communique, but did send a message to the United Nations Climate Conference in Azerbaijan. In short, get the climate finance deal done this week.
We now need to translate political will into practical work.
A boost for flagging talks, maybe. But an obvious omission, say analysts, was no mention of fossil fuels. None.
As the world's biggest economies and biggest emitters, their statement of walking away from fossil fuel would have made a huge wind in the sail for these negotiations here.
Especially after last year's COP in Dubai.
It is so decided.
Where they agreed to transition away from fossil fuels. Some parties want that intention underscored here. So far, it's not.
There is a lack of recognition that transitioning away from fossil fuels is part of the solution, and this is worrying.
With the COP talks reaching a critical stage.
The talks are very slow. And the reason it's slow is that no country has made a real offer on the table.
Watching and waiting, those who are advocating for help. Edith Nasika Santian knows too well what drought looks like.
In between the year 2020, 2023, we lost around 4.5 million livestock within the Maasai communities. That is a source of livelihoods for the Maasai community. And so when these livestock are actually gone, what happens? The entire community becomes so devastated. The women in the indigenous communities are the ones that take responsibility.
This is Edith's second UN climate conference, and this time she wants to return home with a promise of financial support to help especially young women adapt to the future. But countries are still at loggerheads over who and how to pay up. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Baku.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump chose Howard Lutnick today to lead the Commerce Department. Lutnick is currently head of a financial services firm, and Trump says he'll lead his tariff and trade agenda. Meanwhile, a pick by Trump last week continues to capture headlines. Chris Reyes reports from New York.
Matt Gaetz resigned from Congress last week after being tapped by President-elect Donald Trump for Attorney General. His resignation put a stop to a vote that could have released a report from a congressional committee looking into allegations of sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, and improper gifts against Gaetz. Now, a lawyer is sharing his client's closed-door testimony given to Congress.
The testimony before the House was yes, that Representative Gaetz paid my client, both of my clients, for sexual favors throughout the summer of 2017 all the way to the beginning of 2019.
Joel Leopard also said that his client witnessed Gaetz having sex with a minor.
She arrived at the party. She had sex with Representative Gaetz within minutes of her arrival. Later on, when she was walking out to the pool area, she observed to her right Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend, who was 17 at the time.
Gaetz has denied all allegations against him, including having sex with a minor. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have called on Congress to release the report on Gaetz, despite his resignation.
I think that if they want a speedy consideration of this nomination, we've got to have as much transparency as we can have.
I think the Senate should have a chance to take a look at any evidence they think is relevant to the decision they have to make.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says releasing a report on Gaetz, who is now effectively a private citizen, would set a bad precedent.
I would be concerned about opening the Pandora's box of saying that the House Ethics Committee, with its vast resources and unlimited power, effectively, could could investigate private citizens and release reports about them.
Senate confirmation hearings for Trump's nominees are slated to begin next year, soon after he officially moves into the White House in January. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
A human smuggler who'd been ordered to surrender his passport was issued a new one by the federal government. The man had pleaded guilty and was under house arrest, awaiting sentencing. He was then linked to a failed attempt to smuggle people into the U.S., which left 2 families dead. It was during that investigation in 2023 that the new passport was found. Jorge Barrera has more.
I have a hope I will get some kind of refugee application process is easier here in this country.
A Sri Lankan man weeps in this interrogation video following a failed attempt to smuggle him into Canada in April 2021. Detective Sergeant Matthew Amer with a multi-agency border task force sits across the table.
My role here is to investigate the criminality involving people smuggling him across the border as a victim.
I don't know the process in this country.
The man was sent back to the U.S., but this was the beginning of Amer's dealings with Thesson Garrison Rasaya, who was convicted of arranging this 2021 smuggling run.
I was part of the takedown team that day.
It began with a tip from U.S. Border Patrol and ended in this Cornwall, Ontario parking lot. Police watched as Rasaya pulled in to pick up the Sri Lankan national who had just been smuggled into Canada.
So they were boxed in and guns were drawn until we established that everything was safe, took everybody into custody.
Rasaya was charged in order to surrender his passport and remain at home under strict conditions, monitored by ankle bracelet to await trial. But that didn't stop him.
He was still operating even though he was on release.
He was then allegedly linked to the fatal U.S.-bound human smuggling run in March 2023 that ended with the death of 2 families who drowned with their boatmen in stormy weather on the St. Lawrence River. When police raided Rasaya's Montreal home in 2023 after the deaths, they found this.
He had obtained a new passport.
It's probably one of the worst failures I've seen in 9 years now.
Tom Kimmich, the conservative immigration critic, says he wants a parliamentary committee to examine how Rasaya got a new passport while under court-imposed conditions, barring him from having one.
And how bad is our national security infrastructure when we can't catch the most basic things in our system?
Immigration Canada said privacy laws prevented them from commenting on Rasaya's case. The RCMP refused comment. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada's inflation rate jumped last month. An increase was expected, but the October number was larger than forecast. StatsCan says inflation rose to 2% last month, up from 1.6% in September. The price of gasoline, groceries, and rent were the main factors. The increase is not expected to halt the Bank of Canada's interest rate cuts, but it could see the bank slow down the pace of those cuts. The central bank's next setting is scheduled for December 11th.
The mental health of Canadians is under stress. A new report released today says 2.5 million people are not getting adequate care for their mental health. CBC's Mike Crawley has the details.
This report card comes from the Canadian Mental Health Association, and it provides data on a couple of dozen measures, including the prevalence of mental illness, how much access we all have to mental health care, and how much is being spent in the sector. 7.8% of Canadians have a need for mental health care that is not being met. Now that's roughly 1 in 12 of us, or about 2.5 million people. And then on spending, well, the provinces put on average a little more than 6% of their healthcare budgets into mental health, addictions, and substance use, and that is roughly half what is spent in such countries as France and Germany. Now, what does this all add up to? Well, the report card says it means that people face paying out of pocket for mental health services like psychological counseling, or they face really long wait times trying to get access to services if they're provided through the public system. Now, the lead author of this report also says there are significant disparities in the care that's available in different parts of the country.
We want to see governments work together and collaborate when it comes to mental health and addictions. And that also means making it part of the universal healthcare system. It will be really difficult to make those changes to improve population health if we can't make this care universal.
This CMHA report card is critical of the federal government for not implementing the mental health strategy that was drawn up a decade ago. And it says that Ottawa needs not only to increase mental health funding, but also to attach strings so that the provinces are forced to provide more mental health services through the public system. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a new push to keep girls playing organized sports. A report released this week says that many girls still believe that sports are for boys and that more must be done to ensure girls get the benefits of participation. Jamie Strachan reports.
As the weather cools, the game is moved inside for this girls' soccer team. For Bridget Byrne, it's one of many sports she enjoys.
It's really fun to play sports because you can have good teammates and you can play and make new friends.
Her coach agrees.
I always want to create a safe environment where they can come out, try new things. I want to be that role model in their life like I had when I was growing up.
A new report says 63% of girls 6 to 18 participate in organized sports, higher than ever, and only slightly behind boys. And fewer are leaving sport as they get older.
For the first time, we're seeing that the dropout rate between girls and boys is actually starting to close and look more comparable, which is a real positive sign of progress.
Participation begins to fall as girls get older, quitting because of a number of factors, including many girls thinking that sports are for boys. But that's changing.
They want to be who they are, and they see that now on TV.
Olympian Marnie McBean says a new professional sports landscape is giving young girls something to shoot for.
You watch the PWHL, it's a physical sport. It's amazing. It doesn't have to be dumbed down to be girls' sport.
Take the shot, save this, score!
So the future, I think, is really exciting.
I have days where I'm like super happy and my teammate might be struggling.
Canadian basketball star Kia Nurse says it's important for young girls to know they can be feminine and sporty.
We tend to not put ourselves in boxes and say you can only look one certain way. We try to give ourselves an opportunity to show that you can be your most authentic self, because that's when you're going to play your best.
Young athletes are increasingly cutting through the noise and enjoying the game.
Just like, you know what, I don't even care no more. It's my business. Well, how about you do your thing and I do my thing?
It's what more and more young girls across the country are saying. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's main stock index recovered from early losses today to end slightly up, while U.S. markets were mixed. Here's a look at where things did close as we head to break. I don't want to think too much about next week and the potential of some sunshine, but
Tuesday, I know.
we're going to need it, aren't we?
Oh, it's so far away, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now listen, we know that this stretch doesn't look great, and I can feel it. I can see it in the viewer pictures.
Uh-oh.
I mean, there's not a lot to take pictures of right now, right? So we're going to dip back a few days to remember the good old days. And this was taken last week in Eastern Passage, early last week, I believe, and a beautiful shot from Carol.
Sun.
So nice, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll get back to that. And listen, if you're feeling kind of down about the weather that is over the next few days, and certainly it's unsettled for sure, I mean, when you look at some of the other options out there, I mean, in case you missed it earlier, this storm is going to be an absolute, very, very strong one, is the best way to say it, for Vancouver Island. Sustained winds, 70, 80, maybe 90 kilometers per hour, gusts 90 to 120 possible for Vancouver Island with that storm, and flooding rains, dangerous situation, in fact, setting up for Northern California with that atmospheric river moving in. And then for the central parts of the country, seeing snow. 15 to 30 centimeters, Saskatchewan, Western Manitoba.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's shovelable.
Okay, so now we're going to get back.
There's a method to your madness,
I like
isn't
the theme
there?
here. It's
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be grateful.
Not great. Not 30 centimeters of snow.
Could be worse.
Not a huge storm rolling
Yeah.
in. So
Ryan, you've cheered us all up.
everything
Congratulations.
in perspective. Yes, 8, 9, 10 degrees again tomorrow with, yes, those showers and drizzle and a few sunny breaks down towards the south and west. We'll see a very similar story for Thursday. And then we're looking at that beneficial wet weather to track in for Friday and into Saturday. That's where we actually could pick up some substantial rainfall, and we do need it, as we've been saying over the last few days.
For sure. Well, sometimes it can be a little tricky getting an uninvited guest to leave. That's what one Australian couple discovered recently. Have a look.
Oh my God. What do I do?
Fran Diaz-Ruffino and Bruno Ruffino came home from work to find a koala in their bed. They believe he came in through the pet door, and Bruno tried to pick him up, but clearly he was quite uncomfortable and didn't want to be disturbed.
But after using some clothes and gentle guidance, the koala found himself back outdoors. They hope the koala will go back to its own home in a eucalyptus tree somewhere and stay there.
Koala looks so comfortable
He's
there.
very cute.
Yeah.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.